been there, haven't you? Sitting in a quiet room, long after the noise of the world has faded, staring at walls that feel too close, at the ceiling that feels too high. The house is silent, but inside your mind won't stop. Thoughts race, questions swirl, doubts press in, and somewhere in the middle of it all, there's this whisper you tried to ignore. Maybe it's all over. Maybe it's your dream that failed. The job you poured yourself into, the project that never took off, the plan you nurtured for years that suddenly fell apart. Maybe it's the relationship you thought would last, the people you trusted, the promises made and broken. Maybe it's just the weight of life itself, pressing down so heavily that it feels impossible to lift your head. And in those moments, even the prayers you've whispered seem to hang unanswered in the air. You replay it all in your mind, don't you? Every mistake, every choice, every moment you wish you could undo. And with each replay, it's harder to believe that God is still there, watching, caring, orchestrating something bigger than your pain. Jeremiah 29 verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you. You've read it 1,000 times, maybe even whispered it in desperation, but right now it feels distant, almost unreachable. How can there be a plan when it feels like everything is falling apart? You recall the nights you cried yourself to sleep, the moments you wished you could disappear, the silence of an empty room that seems louder than any voice. You wonder if anyone notices, if anyone understands, if anyone even sees the struggle behind the smile you wear in public. The first chapter of your life feels like it has ended in tragedy, unfinished, unsatisfying, broken. But here's the thing, endings are not always what they seem. Sometimes they are the pause before the miracle, the quiet before the shift, the darkness before the dawn. Even when you feel abandoned, even when you think you've reached the last page, there is someone writing beyond what your eyes can see, crafting the story you cannot yet imagine. In the quiet, a tiny spark stirs. Perhaps it's a memory of a prayer you whispered years ago, a memory of faith you thought you had lost. Perhaps it's a thought, almost too soft to hold on to, that life is not finished, that your story isn't over, that what feels like a closing chapter is only preparation for something greater. You realize that this moment, painful as it is shaping you. Every tear, every disappointment, every sleepless night, every quiet struggle, it is all part of a bigger narrative. You are not wasted. You are not forgotten. The first chapter may have ended, but the second chapter is waiting. And the author is not you. It's God. And even now, as you sit in the quiet, staring at the shadows on the wall, you sense it. A pull, subtle and gentle, like a whisper you can't quite hear yet. A presence, soft but undeniable, saying, "Trust me. This isn't the end. There is more." And in that whisper, faint as it may be, you feel the stirrings of hope. A hope that says, your story is far from over. Your life, your purpose, your dreams are not lost. They are simply waiting for the hand of God to guide the pen, to write the second chapter that you cannot yet imagine, a chapter of redemption, courage, and beauty. And in that realization, even before you understand how, a tiny courage rises in your chest. Maybe it's just enough to lift your head. Maybe it's just enough to take one small step forward. But that step, that first step of trust, is where the second chapter begins. And though the page is blank, though the story is uncertain, you are ready to read what God will write next. After the heaviness of that first chapter, life seems to move forward, even if you don't. Days pass with a strange rhythm, ordinary yet somehow charged with quiet tension. You notice things you used to overlook. The way sunlight falls through your window in the morning, the faint scent of rain lingering in the air, the way a stranger's smile lingers longer than it should. And slowly, imperceptibly, you begin to notice whispers. Not loud, not dramatic, but gentle, intimate, almost personal, as if someone is leaning close just to remind you. You are not alone. Perhaps it's a thought that enters your mind at the exact moment you need it. A memory of a verse you haven't thought about in years. Psalm 37 verse 23 echoes softly. The steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord. You wonder if you are imagining it, if your heart is reading meaning into coincidence. But deep down you feel it, a presence, a soft alignment, a subtle guidance threading its way through your life, nudging you toward something unseen, something you cannot yet understand. You notice small miracles. A message from an old friend at just the right time, a book that lands in your hands with exactly the answer you need, a quiet pause in the chaos that allows clarity to emerge. Each one is fleeting, easily dismissed, but your heart latches onto them. They are proof, delicate, fragile proof, that your story is not over, that the pen is still in the hands of the author who knows the ending before you even understand the beginning. And yet fear is there. The fear of trusting again, the fear of hope after heartbreak, the fear that maybe this whisper is only your imagination. You recall the moments of failure, the nights of tears, the dreams that crumbled before your eyes. You wonder, what if I am too broken? What if the second chapter cannot be written for me? But in that hesitation, a subtle, almost imperceptible courage rises. It is not brash or loud. It does not erase the fear. Instead, it coexists with it, a quiet insistence that you try again. That you step forward even if trembling. That you respond to the whisper, even if you cannot yet see where it will lead. One morning, as you walk through the familiar streets of your life, a phrase comes to mind. Philippians 3 verse 13. Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, you pause. You breathe. And in that breath something shifts. The past, with all its mistakes, disappointments, and pain, begins to feel lighter. Not gone, not erased, but transformed. Its purpose is revealed. Preparation. Every heartbreak, every setback, every sleepless night, they were shaping you for this second chapter, for a life aligned with a plan far greater than you could imagine. You begin to notice opportunities appearing, doors you had not even seen before. A chance conversation that sparks an idea. A moment of courage that opens a possibility. A decision that seems small but shifts the course of your day, your week, your life. And with each step, the whispers grow clearer. Not in sound but in certainty. Not in force but in alignment. The second chapter is being written. Quietly, beautifully, purposefully. And you begin to trust it. Not fully yet, not without doubt, but enough to take the first step forward. A step that might be as small as forgiving, as subtle as reaching out, or as brave as trying again. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you respond to the whisper, that you listen, that you trust the unseen hand guiding your story. That night, as you lie in bed, the world quiet around you, you feel a shift inside. A sense of possibility. Fragile yet undeniable. You close your eyes and whisper a prayer. God, show me the way. Guide my steps. Write the second chapter with me. And in that whisper you feel a pulse, a rhythm, a promise. A second chapter is beginning, and it carries the weight of hope, the strength of resilience, and the presence of a God who never left, even when you thought the first chapter had ended forever. The days that follow feel different, though at first you can't quite name why. The world looks the same, yet you are not the same. There is a quiet courage stirring in your chest, a steady rhythm that tells you are walking into the story God is writing, one deliberate, unhurried step at a time. You notice it in your choices, in the way your heart hesitates less, in the way your mind lingers on hope instead of despair. The first step is never easy. It might be as simple as sending a message you've avoided, starting a project you were too afraid to attempt, or forgiving someone, or even yourself, for the mistakes that weighed so heavily on the first chapter. Fear still whispers in your ear, reminding you of what you've lost, what could go wrong, what might fail again. But now, alongside the fear, there is a voice, quiet, persistent, reminding you that God is with you, that this is not just your story, but His, and that every step forward is a step toward purpose. You begin to notice patterns you missed before. The right people appearing at the right time, doors opening unexpectedly, opportunities that align with your gifts and passions. It's as though life itself is moving in harmony with a hand you cannot see. And in that harmony, a strange confidence emerges. It's not overconfidence, not the arrogance of self-reliance. It's the calm strength of one who knows they are guided, that their efforts are supported by something infinitely greater than themselves. Yet the path is not without challenges. Old doubts rise like shadows at dusk. Temptations to give up, to return to old habits, to cling to what was familiar, attempt to pull you back. You stumble at times, falter, and wonder if you're strong enough. But each time, you remember Philippians 3 verses 13 to 14. Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal. You breathe. You pick yourself up. You take the next step, however uncertain it feels. There are small victories along the way. A conversation that restores a broken friendship, a moment of courage that sparks a new opportunity, an insight that changes how you see yourself and the world. Each one is a thread, weaving together a tapestry you could not have imagined from the ruins of the first chapter. And slowly, the story begins to feel alive again. You are not just surviving, you are beginning to thrive. You notice subtle signs, the sunrise painting your walls in gold, a sudden song that lifts your heart, a word of encouragement at exactly the right moment. These are not coincidences. They are the fingerprints of God, the gentle ink of the second chapter forming across the blank pages of your life. And with each day, each choice, each small act of faith, the story grows stronger, brighter, fuller. You begin to embrace the unknown, trusting that the plot is already unfolding, even if you cannot yet read it. You understand that the second chapter is not free from struggle. It is a story of courage, resilience, and trust. But now, struggle is not a threat, it is a teacher. Fear is not an enemy. It is a guide reminding you to rely on God, to take one step at a time. And in the quiet moments, you reflect on how far you've come. The despair that once felt all-encompassing now seems like a shadow, a contrast that makes the light of hope shine even brighter. You are learning that God's plan is rarely about comfort. It is about transformation, about walking through difficulty with faith, about becoming a person capable of carrying the story He intends to write. By evening, as the world slows and quiet settles again, you recognize a subtle truth. The second chapter is alive in you. Not just in dreams, not just in plans, not just in hope, but in action, in choices, in courage, in moments of trust. And though you cannot see the entire story yet, you know this. The author has a vision, the pen is steady, and every step you take writes your life in harmony with his purpose. You lie down that night not in fear, not in uncertainty, but in anticipation. The path is unfolding, the story is moving, and you are walking it step by step, moment by moment. You feel a quiet thrill in your chest, a gentle certainty. The second chapter is yours to live, but it is written by God, and it is more beautiful than you could have imagined. Morning comes, and for the first time in a long time it feels like more than just a day, it feels like a new beginning. The sunlight streams through the window differently, warmer, brighter, as if the world itself is celebrating the steps you've taken, the courage you've mustered, the faith you've held onto despite the shadows. You look around at your life and notice things that once seemed broken now carry potential. Relationships, dreams, even yourself. You remember the nights of despair, the long, sleepless hours, the pain that once felt unbearable. And yet, you realize now that it was all part of a preparation, a refining fire shaping the person capable of walking the second chapter God was writing. Romans 8 verse 28 whispers in your heart. All things work together for good for those who love God. And you finally understand, the first chapter wasn't a failure. It was the foundation, the soil, the prelude to something greater. You notice the subtle blessings woven into your days. Laughter that returns without effort, opportunities appearing in ways you never imagined, doors opening where there were once walls. Each blessing is a note in the symphony of your second chapter. composed by the hand that knows the end before you even see the beginning. And with each note, your heart feels lighter, your spirit steadier, your vision clearer. The fear that once gripped you has not disappeared completely, but it no longer controls you. You see it now as a companion, a reminder of the growth you've undergone, the lessons you've learned, the resilience you've discovered within yourself. You walk forward with deliberate steps, knowing that the path may still have twists, yet trusting that each step is guided, each challenge is purposeful, and each triumph is part of God's plan. You reflect on the transformation. The person you once were, lost in doubt and despair, now stands renewed, grounded in faith, and open to the unfolding story. You feel gratitude for the pain, for the waiting, for the whispers that guided you gently along the way. And in that gratitude, a deep, unshakable peace settles in your soul. You raise your eyes to the horizon, to the vast unknown that still awaits, and for the first time you don't fear it. You see it as a canvas, a gift, a story yet fully revealed. You realize that life's second chapters are rarely handed over fully formed. They are written step by step, choice by choice, prayer by prayer, and that God is the author, painting beauty from the fragments of yesterday. And in this understanding you smile quietly, deeply, fully. You whisper a prayer not for certainty, but for courage. God, let me walk this chapter with you. Let me trust your hand. Let me see your beauty even when I cannot yet see the whole story. The day unfolds, each moment carrying the promise of purpose, each decision guided by a wisdom far greater than your own. You know now that the story is alive, that your life is precious, and that the second chapter, the chapter written by God Himself, is unfolding before your eyes. And in that unfolding, you finally understand this truth. Endings are only beginnings in disguise. The pain of the first chapter was never wasted. The tears, the struggles, the waiting, all were preparation for a life renewed, a spirit strengthened, a story rewritten in hope, faith, and divine love. The second chapter is here. And it is beautiful,